Hey guys, Matt Rosenblum here. Really excited to be with Bill Amirault. How you doing, Bill?
Doing great.
Um, so Bill's a career coach, and we'll get into exactly what he does. But I'd like to first kick things off with a question. What do you wish you knew 10 years ago?
I wish I knew 10 years ago that I had already taken too long to do something that I really should have been doing, which is what I'm doing now. I spent 25 years doing various corporate marketing, brand management, advertising roles, which at certain times I enjoyed a lot, but I really enjoy doing this a lot more.
So I guess realizing you wanted to be a coach or just be your own.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. A little of both, actually, but more the coach part than whether it's on my own. I do like the flexibility of making my own schedule, but it's far more of a rewarding set of circumstances when somebody calls up and said, "Hey, I just got the job that you and I were talking about last week," and coaching them through the process so that they can get that position is always a very rewarding thing.
Yeah, sure. It's like it brings many freedoms to be your own boss. Like it's like one, like you feel like you're more directly helping people, especially with coaching. Um, Two, obviously you set your own times, set your own schedule, so that feels a lot more freeing. And there's other things like freedom of relationships, freedom of like obviously like money, and freedom of purpose too.
100%. And one of the things I work with people on is what's the bullseye between the following four items? It's what you like doing, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for.
Totally.
And when you're in that sweet spot, you're in a good place.
Yeah, totally agree. So what's something that you're curious about right now? Maybe you're reading about it or just some idea or something that you're curious about.
It's funny because I used to be a lot more of a reader, except when I started writing the book that we're publishing coming up. So the curious thing that's hit my radar here recently is somebody who has a coaching practice based on matchmaking dependent on what's in the palm of your hand, like using palm reading as a matchmaking type of thing. Now, it's not like I'm in the matchmaking business, but just the empirical evidence associated with what she's doing related to reading somebody's palm and then interpreting that into what kind of person would that individual be best matched with. I just find that a fascinating thing. So I've been doing some reading on that recently.
Oh, wow.
Um, in general, though, I do a fair amount of reading on, how to make the best out of me individually or people that I'm working with. So, I guess we'll call it self-help section of
Yeah,
your
no,
bookstore, but
I
I
feel you.
gravitate to that. So,
Yeah, me too. It's like I read a lot of that as well. Like that's I just kind of come back to that kind of literature. Um, and but it feels like it covers a lot of like sub areas really. Like the way I see it is like it's not just like self help. There's like a self help when it comes to all these different areas, and then there's you can kind of read any book as a self help book. That makes
yeah.
sense.
Well, as you're saying this, one of the things that is front and center in the book that my colleague and I've been working on, it's at the publisher right now, should be available May or June. It's called Finding God's Plan for Your Career hyphen making your work for you. And I, from a very fundamental place, I believe, God, whatever way you want to believe him or her to be, put us all here for a variety of reasons, and career is a really important one. And it's up to us to figure out and manifest those reasons in the best way that we can.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the theme that our book operates from. There's a little bit of how to in it. In fact, there's a lot of how to in it, but it's more why than how to, using the how to get to the why.
What's the name of the book?
It's called um, Finding God's Plan for Your Career.
Nice.
And
And you're
again, and then, in parentheses, making your work for you.
Mm, interesting. I feel like nobody's written like about that exact thing, like that exact integration. Like I've seen stuff about like spirituality and career, but not exactly the way you're describing it.
Yeah, and again, we'll see what happens with it. I mean, I certainly will use it as a guide. I already am using it as a guide with my clients, but making sure that we do the proper promotion, get it out there in a way that's going to be meaningful in terms of, not just for the sake of selling books, although that will be a good benefit, but
Sure.
really helping people discover within themselves what's already there.
Yeah, awesome. And it sounds like you're writing it with someone else, or
Yeah, my colleague Henry Lesher, who actually asked me to come back and help him do this career coaching about 6 years ago, he had written a book back 10 years ago that needed a lot of updating, just in terms of, you know, making it contemporary. It needed some reorganization, and it needed some themes, and which I was able to do last year. I spent a fair amount of time between, say, May and November, just completely rewriting it. It's 150 pages. It's pretty tight. I think it gets to the point pretty quickly all the way through the book. And he and I have gone through every word of it. He's happy with it. He's made some edits, and like I said, it's at the publisher now, and we're waiting for their edits to come back so we can get it rolling.
what's the publisher?
It's a group called Christian Faith Publishers. They're out of Western Pennsylvania. And there are some things in there that I know I'm going to need copyright approval for, which I'm in the process of getting as well. I mean, I've used other resources. I'm not pretending to be able to have created all this from scratch, but I think the way it's compiled and sequenced makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it sounds like really exciting. Like it can be used for not just someone who wants to like coach themselves in a way, like they want to they don't have the resources or they can't work with a coach. They can use it as a kind of guidebook, but also with your it goes along with that.
Exactly. Sorry for the noise in the background.
No
but exactly, and that's what it's intended to be. I mean, we will, you know, we've been doing one-on-one coaching for a long period of time. The other thing that I'm doing this year is creating group webinars that people who can afford a little bit but not a lot would want to participate in. And then obviously the book will be the guide all the way through, no matter who we're working with. So anyway, again, sorry for the noise, but anyway,
yeah,
go ahead.
Things happen. Yeah, we just got to be zen about whatever comes up. We just accept it. So,
good point.
What is the most common mistake people are making when it comes to career coaching, in your opinion?
What I find is, and again, this comes from me spending as much time as I did in the marketing advertising world, is really not understanding what their true value proposition is, and then how to communicate it. I mean, there are a lot of things that people can do that they often take for granted. So it comes in they either undersell themselves or miscommunicate what it is and miss the mark in terms of what potential hiring managers or clients might be looking for, because they don't have a fuller understanding of what it is that they can really do, or what the impact is of what they can do. So
right.
that's probably the most common mistake. I mean, you can always talk about how people handle interview situations and that kind of thing, but if you have the foundation and the framework of, I really know what my value is and how I can use it, let's make it so that it works for you, Mr. Interviewer or Ms. Interviewer. Once you have the framework and the foundation, the rest of it is relatively easy.
That makes a lot of sense. Like focus on the high level thing, that what you need, and then kind of everything else follows based on that. And it's interesting that you said that, because usually I think of value proposition as like me as a marketing and business coach, like I'm helping people with their value proposition, but it's in the context of their business. And so you apply it to people who are on their job search as well. That's interesting to me because it totally applies to that as well. And I don't see any reason why it doesn't.
Yeah. And the real thing is, how can you make what you can do be valuable to somebody who's sitting across the desk from you or on the other end of the phone? And, you know, the second part of any job search, like the quote unquote marketing positioning part, is how do you do your resume and LinkedIn profile and define your value proposition? But then the second part of it is just as important, is how do you get your credentials in front of as many of the right people as possible? And then how do you quote unquote close the deal when you're in an interview? How do you become the gold medal winner as opposed to something else?
Right. And it's literally the same kinds of stuff that a business has to go through, but applying it to just getting the job and getting the interview.
Yeah. And it just different target audience. Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Interesting. So what's something that's true, in your opinion, that nobody agrees on, or very few people agree about?
Very few people. I'm sorry. Say it again.
Very few people agree on something that you think is true that no one else thinks is true.
Wow. I'll put it to you this way. I may be overstating this, but I'll go with it anyway. Is there's always the need to quote unquote find a job, support yourself, pay the bills and everything else. But a lot of people don't agree on this concept, which is, hey, what was I really put here to do? And they don't want to peel the onion layers back to find out what that might really mean. And sometimes you just get people who are more superficial about it, and other times you get people who may not really want to find the answers anyway. They just want to keep doing what they're doing because it's in their comfort zone. But I don't have the answers, but I have the questions. And when the questions are out there, the answers usually follow right behind.
Right.
And so when you say that not a lot of people agree on, it's just they look at it from a different perspective. I think it's probably a better way to say it than disagreeing.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, they're not coming from the same point of view. It's not like they're disagreeing with it, but they're just don't. You're helping them see more and kind of reframe what they're.
Yeah, what I try to do is help them see the forest for the trees, and then we'll go in and chop the trees down with the right tools. And
Okay.
once
I like that.
it's just a different, you can walk into any forest and chop a tree, but are you in the right forest? Are you, are there better trees somewhere else, or whatever it might be? And
Totally.
I try to look at it from top down first, and then get to ground level.
That makes sense. And so concretely, like, what would you suggest? Like, how can we put some of your like high level concepts into action? Like for anyone watching this video, what's some concrete advice that you can give them, or maybe action steps for them to
Well,
develop their
yeah,
career?
yeah. A couple things is like one of the things that I do early on with any client that I'm working with is say, what do you think your destination is right now? Why are we doing this? And some of them will say, look, I've been in this career for 15, 20 years and I really enjoy it. I just happen to get laid off because it was a reorg. Okay, great. So we kind of stay on the same pathway. But I will also say, what other pathways have you either not explored or just kind of ignored possibly? And I'll have them go back through their some life history, not just work history, and say what things really drove you. What things would you get up and do if somebody didn't pay you? Although we're going to get paid. So I kind of come at it from that standpoint and then work forward,
Mm,
because it's usually those things that we've really had the most enjoyment doing, or the most gratification, if you want to call it that, that can lead to what is it that you really should be doing from a career standpoint going forward. I mean, the reality is that we spend more of our waking hours doing career related activities than probably anything else. And it's really important. It always has been for me to do things that you find are, adding value, you enjoy, and bring you the compensation and income that you deserve.
totally. Yeah. Well said. Like, yeah, we spend, what is it, like 8 hours a day on our career, maybe more thinking about it. So it's just really necessary to get that right. And it's also like, if you get that right, a lot of the other areas, you can integrate other areas into that area. Like your relationships and community can come from that. And like your physical health can be integrated into that as well. And your mental health too. So,
Well, you're totally right about that. And although I've been in many types of environments, that some of them were great and some of them were caustic. And sometimes I was doing the same work in one circumstance or another, but the environment is also a big indicator of how well you perform and how well you feel. Like all you said, health and relationships and family and all of that, can either suffer or prosper based on things you're doing related to your career.
totally, I totally agree. Anything you want to share with us that you haven't already shared? Anything else?
I think the big thing is that, and I'll just say this as an observation, the majority of people that I work with, I meet at job fairs in and around the tri-state area, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. And fully, probably two-thirds of the people that I meet with, and it's anywhere from 30 to 50 in a given event, could use some or significant help with what their job search or career search is all about. And just as an observation, if you were driving down the freeway and your transmission blew, you
Mm,
would take it to a qualified technician to
sure.
work on it.
You
All
love
right, and so would I, and
yeah,
happily. I
your
was
head
like, hey,
auto.
dude, you handle this, okay? But there are a lot of DIYers in the career search world that ultimately sell themselves short because they just don't understand what the process really means. And I mean, there are a lot of people I meet that have been through it before. They know what they're doing. They've had some quote unquote training in it, which is great. But if you haven't, it's worth the investment. And I'm not just saying this about in me, but it's worth the investment in yourself to maximize what your worth is, and or discover what your worth or your
Right.
direction needs
And
to be.
ask for help if you
Well,
like.
it becomes like a platform that you can use for the rest of your life, rest of your career. And that would be the one observation that I would make. And it's funny because the people who are most self-sufficient are the ones that say, "No, I can handle this. I can handle this." And I know that even with just a little bit of coaching, they'd be in a whole different place. But look, you can take a horse to water. You can't necessarily make him or her drink, and that's what I find. But the clients that I end up working with or who choose to work with me um, have a great experience because I try to open up as much about them and what they can do as possible. And obviously with the intent of landing either a position because they're in transition or to make an upgrade from where they currently are.
Couldn't agree more. Like people don't ask for help nearly as much as they should. And asking for help doesn't mean that you're doing bad. It typically means like if you're comfortable and confident enough to ask for help, you're probably in a position where you can go from good to great rather than like you're really like um, in need and like you're really deficient. And people often think that like asking for help is a sign of deficiency or like they just don't feel comfortable with it. So I couldn't agree more.
I think you think you're right. That's probably the motivation behind it. And one of the other things is ad agencies would not exist if the clients could figure out how to represent themselves.
Hmm.
And lawyers wouldn't have as much business as they do if their clients. And I'm kind of the same thing. I'm kind of like your personal agency or advocate, or whatever you want to call it, in a way that ultimately is going to be to as much of a benefit as I can provide for you. I mean, to manifest your own goals if I'm working with you. And that's kind of how I look at it. So
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Bill. I really appreciate it.
pleasure working with you and speaking with you, Matt, and best of luck with your services as well.
Thank you. Um,